Danger never arrives wearing horns. It doesn't knock on your door looking like a villain. Instead, it shows up carrying a bouquet of white lilies, wearing an expensive navy sweater, smiling with quiet confidence, and saying something like, "I hope I'm not being too forward, but I don't think I've ever met someone who understands loneliness the way you do." At 52, Linda Parker read the message 4 times before setting her phone down. Outside her small condominium in Irvine, California, a soft December rain blurred the streetlights into long streaks of gold. The kettle on the stove had already gone cold. The television played a cable news program she wasn't really watching. It was only there to keep the silence from becoming too loud. 3 years earlier, silence had never existed. Back then there had been David. His loud footsteps in the hallway. His habit of leaving coffee mugs everywhere. His endless question every evening. "What's for dinner?" Then came Jessica. 28 years old. Worked with him at a luxury car dealership in Newport Beach. The divorce papers arrived less than 2 months later. 30 years of marriage disappeared in one courthouse appointment. Her phone buzzed. It was her best friend. "Linda, tell me you finally made a profile." Rachel's voice always sounded like she was late for something. "I don't know." Linda stared at the laptop sitting unopened on the kitchen table. "Maybe I'm just too old." "Oh, stop it. I'm serious. I'm 52. So? Who wants to date a 52-year-old divorced woman?" Rachel laughed. "Probably a whole lot more men than you think." Linda rolled her eyes. "Easy for you to say. I met Brian online, remember?" "I know. And we've been together almost a year." Rachel paused before speaking again. "You deserve another chance." Those words lingered longer than Linda expected. Another chance. She hadn't allowed herself to believe those existed anymore. That evening she finally opened the dating website. Creating the profile felt strangely embarrassing. Every question reminded her how empty her life had become. Relationship status? Divorced. Children? 1 daughter. Occupation? Retired elementary school teacher. Looking for? She hesitated before typing. A genuine relationship with someone kind, honest, and emotionally mature. She uploaded a photo taken during a trip to Santa Barbara the previous summer. The ocean breeze had softened her hair. The afternoon sunlight had hidden most of the tiredness in her eyes. For the first time in years, she looked happy. Or at least close enough. She clicked publish. Then immediately regretted it. The first week brought exactly what she feared. Messages from men whose profiles featured motorcycles, dead fish, or blurry selfies taken in truck mirrors. "Hey beautiful. You look hot. Want to meet tonight?" Delete. 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 She almost deleted the entire account. Then, on a quiet Tuesday evening, a new notification appeared. The sender's name was Michael Turner. His profile picture showed a distinguished man in his late 50s. Silver hair. Warm eyes. A charcoal sweater. No sunglasses. No luxury car. No shirtless vacation photos. Just a calm smile. His message read, "Good evening, Linda. I came across your profile and couldn't stop thinking about something Ernest Hemingway once wrote, that courage is grace under pressure. Your words don't sound like someone who's given up. They sound like someone who survived. Forgive me if this sounds too direct, but I believe we're searching for the same thing." Linda blinked. No emojis. No awkward compliments. No pickup lines. She read it again. Then once more. Finally. She replied. Their conversations unfolded slowly. One message each morning. Sometimes another before bed. Never rushed. Never demanding. Michael said he was a widower. His wife had passed away from breast cancer 3 years earlier. He had 1 daughter, Emily, who lived in Sacramento and worked as an interior designer. He owned a small construction consulting company based in Orange County. Most of his work involved permits, contracts, and commercial renovations. He loved classic American literature. Frequently visited independent bookstores. Preferred jazz over pop music. Dreamed of taking a road trip through Big Sur one day. Everything about him felt balanced. Real. Comforting. After 2 weeks, Linda couldn't hide her excitement anymore. "I'm starting to think he's too perfect," she admitted while having coffee with Rachel. Rachel smiled. "Or maybe you've finally met someone who's actually emotionally available." Linda laughed nervously. "You really think so?" "I think you should meet him." "What if he's different in person?" "Then you'll know." Rachel leaned forward. Public place. Daytime. Coffee. "If something feels wrong, you leave." Linda nodded. "Fair enough." They met the following Saturday at a quiet cafe in Laguna Beach. Michael arrived 7 minutes early. He carried a bouquet of white lilies. Exactly like the ones in his profile picture. When Linda walked inside, he immediately stood. His smile looked exactly the same as it had on the screen. Maybe even warmer. "Linda?" His voice was calm. "I'm so glad you're here." "So am I." He handed her the flowers. "I wasn't sure if lilies were your favorite." She smiled. "They are now." They laughed together. The nervousness disappeared almost instantly. For the next 3 hours they talked about everything. Teaching. Family. Travel. Books. The strange feeling of starting over after 50. Michael never interrupted. Never checked his phone. Whenever Linda spoke, he looked directly into her eyes as if nothing else in the restaurant existed. When she described the loneliness after her divorce, he quietly nodded. "I understand," he said. Learning how to be alone after decades with someone, it's almost like learning how to breathe all over again. Linda felt tears threatening to appear. Not because she was sad. Because, for the first time in years, she felt understood. Over the next month, Linda would later describe those weeks as the happiest she had experienced in over a decade. Every morning, her phone rang at exactly 8:15. Not a text. A phone call. "Good morning, beautiful," Michael would say in his calm, steady voice. "Did you sleep well?" Some mornings they talked for 5 minutes. Sometimes 15. Never because they had something important to discuss. Simply because they wanted to hear each other's voices. It had been years since anyone had called just to ask how her day had begun. Flowers occasionally appeared at her front door. Not extravagant arrangements. Simple bouquets from a neighborhood florist. A handwritten note always accompanied them. "Thinking of you today. Hope your students would still be proud of you. Smile for me." Linda kept every card inside a kitchen drawer. She couldn't bring herself to throw any of them away. Michael never rushed anything. He never asked to stay the night. Never pressured her. After every date, he walked her to her front door, kissed her gently on the cheek, smiled, and drove home. Old-fashioned. Respectful. Almost unbelievable. One evening Rachel looked across the table at Linda and laughed. "You're glowing." "I'm not." "You absolutely are." Linda smiled despite herself. "I think." She hesitated. "I think I'm falling in love." Rachel reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "I've been waiting for you to say that." Their second date was a walk along the cliffs in Corona del Marche. The third was dinner at a cozy Italian restaurant in Newport Beach. The fourth. Michael surprised her with tickets to a local production of Our Town. After the performance they lingered outside the theater while Christmas lights reflected across the wet sidewalks. Michael quoted a line from the play from memory. Not dramatically. Just naturally. Like someone who genuinely loved stories. Linda smiled. "You remember all that?" "My wife and I used to see plays whenever we could." His smile softened. "I haven't been back to a theater in almost 3 years. I'm glad you came tonight." "So am I." For a brief moment neither of them spoke. Sometimes silence felt more intimate than conversation. That night Linda texted her daughter. Emily, who lived nearly 7 hours away in Sacramento, rarely answered immediately because of work. Still, Linda wanted her to know. "Sweetheart. I think I've met someone. His name is Michael. He's kind. Thoughtful. He's a widower. I just wanted you to hear it from me." The reply came after midnight. "I'm happy if you're happy, Mom. Just promise me you're taking things slow." Linda smiled. "I promise." She placed the phone on the nightstand and fell asleep with a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. She had no idea that hope could become the most dangerous feeling of all. A few weeks later, Michael asked an unexpected question. My daughter is visiting this weekend. Oh. I'd really like you to meet her. Linda nearly dropped her coffee mug. Already? He smiled. Only if you're comfortable. No pressure. But Emily has heard so much about you. And honestly, I think she'd love to meet the woman who finally convinced her father to smile again. Linda laughed nervously. I don't know. You'll do great. Saturday arrived. Linda changed outfits 4 different times before finally settling on a navy dress. She adjusted her hair twice. Applied lipstick. Removed it. Applied a lighter shade. Then drove to a family-owned cafe overlooking the marina in Huntington Beach. Michael was already waiting. Standing beside him was a woman in her early 30s. Blonde hair. Warm smile. Bright green eyes. The moment Linda approached, the young woman wrapped her in a hug. So you're Linda. I'm Emily. I've wanted to meet you for weeks. Linda blinked in surprise. I hope he's only told you good things. Emily laughed. Only wonderful things. She slipped her arm through Linda's as if they'd known each other for years. You have no idea what you've done for him. Linda looked toward Michael. He suddenly seemed almost embarrassed. Emily continued. After Mom passed away, Dad disappeared. He worked. He came home. He barely spoke to anyone. For almost 3 years. She looked at Linda. But now, he's laughing again. I haven't seen that in forever. Michael quietly looked away toward the harbor. Linda noticed his eyes beginning to shine. Lunch stretched into almost 3 hours. Emily told funny stories about growing up. About family camping trips in Yosemite. About Thanksgiving disasters. About her mother. She spoke of her naturally. Not with unbearable sadness. But with affection. As though grief had become something gentle instead of unbearable. Before dessert arrived, Emily smiled at Linda. You know, my mom always used to tell Dad something. What? If anything ever happens to me, promise me you won't spend the rest of your life alone. Emily looked at her father. He kept that promise. Linda swallowed hard. The lump in her throat surprised her. That evening Michael drove Linda home. They sat in his SUV outside her condo. Neither seemed eager for the evening to end. Thank you. He spoke quietly. For today. It meant more than you know. Emily is wonderful. She gets that from her mother. He stared through the windshield. I've spent years wondering if I'd ever feel alive again. Then he looked back at Linda. I think I finally do. Linda reached over and took his hand. You deserve that. So do you. The following weekend Michael invited her to his vacation home. It's nothing fancy, he said. Just a small place outside Temecula. My wife and I bought it years ago. We always planned to retire there. He smiled sadly. But life had different plans. The house sat on a quiet hillside overlooking rows of vineyards. It wasn't enormous. But it felt peaceful. A wraparound porch. Oak trees. A garden that had clearly been cared for many years. Inside, everything smelled faintly of cedar and fresh coffee. Family photographs covered the fireplace. Michael and a dark-haired woman smiling on a beach. Emily as a teenager. Christmas mornings. Birthday parties. Ordinary memories frozen forever. Michael picked up one framed photograph. This was Sarah. My wife. Linda studied the picture. Sarah's smile looked genuine. The kind that reached a person's eyes. What did she do? She taught high school English. Michael smiled softly. Maybe that's why talking to you has always felt so familiar. Linda looked at him. For the first time since her divorce. She allowed herself to imagine a future again. The weekend at Michael's house felt like stepping into the life Linda had once imagined for herself. They cooked dinner together. Michael chopped vegetables while Linda seasoned fresh salmon. Soft jazz played from an old speaker in the living room. Outside, rain tapped gently against the porch roof while the fireplace filled the house with warmth. Nothing about the evening felt rushed. Nothing felt forced. After dinner they carried 2 glasses of California wine onto the porch and watched the sunset disappear behind the rolling hills. For a long time they simply listened to the wind moving through the oak trees. Finally Michael spoke. You know, I forgot what peace felt like. So did I. Later that evening they wandered through the house together. Michael stopped beside a bookshelf filled with novels. Steinbeck, Fitzgerald, Harper Lee. A few worn copies of Hemingway with handwritten notes tucked between the pages. Linda ran her fingers across the shelves. You've actually read all of these? Most of them twice. My wife insisted books should always look used. He laughed quietly. She said untouched books were lonely. Linda smiled. I would have liked her. I think she would have liked you too. For a brief second, sadness crossed his face. Then it disappeared. As they prepared breakfast the next morning, Michael casually mentioned work. My business has been keeping me busy lately. What exactly do you do again? I own a construction consulting company. We help developers navigate permits, inspections, contracts. He shrugged. Mostly paperwork these days. Sounds stressful. It has been. He hesitated. Actually, there has been one complication. Linda looked up from the coffee maker. What happened? Michael leaned against the kitchen counter. The IRS decided to audit one of our commercial projects. Linda frowned. An audit? They temporarily froze several business accounts while everything is reviewed. Is that serious? He smiled reassuringly. Not really. It's mostly bureaucracy. My attorneys say it'll probably be resolved within a month. So everything's okay? Oh, absolutely. He waved the concern away. It just means cash flow is tied up for a little while. I've had to pay employees and contractors out of my personal savings. It'll work itself out. Then he changed the subject. So, I was thinking we should drive into town after breakfast. I know a bakery that makes the best cinnamon rolls in California. Linda laughed. You really know how to distract someone. I try. The conversation ended there. At least for the moment. Driving home that afternoon, Linda called Rachel. I don't think I've ever been this happy. Rachel could hear it immediately. I can tell. He showed me his vacation house. I met his daughter. He told me everything about his wife. Nothing feels hidden. Rachel was quiet. Longer than usual. What's wrong? It's probably nothing. Tell me. Rachel sighed. It all seems very fast. Linda frowned. What do you mean? You've known each other for what? 2 months? A little over. And you've already met his family. Visited his house. He talks about your future. I don't know. It just feels unusually quick. Linda stared through the windshield. We're not 25 anymore. I know. When you're our age, you don't waste years trying to figure people out. Rachel nodded, though Linda couldn't see her. I understand. I just don't want you getting hurt. Linda laughed softly. Rachel. He hasn't asked me for anything. He pays for every dinner. Every ticket. Every flower. He owns a business. He has a beautiful home. What exactly would he be using me for? Rachel didn't answer immediately. I hope you're right. Linda smiled. I know I'm right. 3 evenings later, Michael showed up at her condo carrying a bouquet of white peonies. Linda opened the door and froze. Michael slowly stepped inside. Without saying a word. He knelt on one knee. Linda's heart nearly stopped. Michael. He reached into his jacket pocket. Not for a ring. Instead, he unfolded a small velvet box. Inside was a delicate vintage diamond ring. It belonged to my grandmother. He looked up at her. His eyes shimmered with tears. I never thought I'd love anyone again. I truly believed that part of my life had ended forever. He swallowed hard. But then, I met you. You reminded me that life doesn't end after heartbreak. It begins again. His voice cracked. Linda Parker. Will you marry me? For several seconds she couldn't breathe. Everything around her disappeared. The rain outside. The television. The ticking kitchen clock. There was only Michael. Only hope. Only the future she thought she'd lost forever. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Yes. She laughed through them. Yes. I will. Michael slipped the ring onto her finger. Then stood and embraced her. For a long time neither of them spoke. They simply held each other. Outside. Rain continued falling across Southern California. Neither of them noticed. And somewhere, without Linda realizing it, the countdown had already begun. There were only 58 days left before her entire world would collapse. The wedding was set for 6 weeks later. Small. Private. Exactly the way Michael wanted it. No giant ballroom, he said with a smile as they sat together on Linda's balcony one Sunday afternoon. No 200-person guest list. No unnecessary stress. He gently squeezed her hand. I've already had one wedding. So have you. I don't need another performance. I just want a marriage. Linda couldn't have agreed more. After everything she'd been through, she no longer cared about expensive receptions or elaborate decorations. She simply wanted peace. She wanted someone to wake up beside every morning. Someone to grow old with. Nothing more. Over the following weeks they spent nearly every evening together. They sampled cake flavors. Visited a small vineyard that might host the ceremony. Talked about honeymoon destinations. Napa. Monterey. Maybe even Hawaii. For the first time in years, Linda caught herself making plans that stretched farther than next month. She bought a notebook. On the cover she wrote, "Our future." Inside were pages filled with ideas. Places to travel. Recipes to try. Books to read together. Flowers she wanted to plant one day. She hadn't realized how much of herself had been asleep until Michael walked into her life. One rainy evening they sat in Linda's condominium drinking tea. Michael quietly looked around the room. The condo wasn't ugly. It was simply old. The kitchen cabinets had faded over the years. The carpet had seen better days. The windows overlooked a crowded parking lot. Linda noticed him staring. What? He smiled softly. Can I ask you something? Of course. Have you ever thought about leaving all this behind? She looked around the room. What do you mean? A fresh start. He leaned back in his chair. A real home. Somewhere with a yard. A porch. Fruit trees. A place where our grandchildren could visit someday. Linda laughed. I don't even have grandchildren. You might. He smiled. And if not, we'll spoil the neighbor's kids. She laughed again. Then Michael became unusually quiet. I've always dreamed of having a family home. He looked out the window. Sarah dreamed about it too. We never got the chance. He paused. But maybe. Life is giving us another opportunity. Linda followed his gaze. Rain slid slowly down the glass. What are you saying? Michael turned back toward her. I'm saying. Why don't we build a new life together? Linda remained silent. Michael spoke gently, almost cautiously. This condo is worth a good amount now. The Southern California market is still strong. If you sold it, and I added my own money, we could buy a beautiful house outright. No mortgage. No debt. Just us. Linda felt her stomach tighten. Sell my condo? Not tomorrow. He smiled reassuringly. I'm only asking you to think about it. You've lived here a long time. I understand. But does this place really represent the life you want now? Linda slowly looked around her living room. The same furniture. The same walls. The same silence she'd lived with since the divorce. She imagined something different. Morning coffee on a wooden porch. A garden. Michael reading the newspaper nearby. A golden retriever sleeping in the sun. The picture formed effortlessly in her mind. Almost too effortlessly. Michael noticed her expression. If you're uncomfortable. Forget I mentioned it. I never want you to feel pressured. I don't. Linda reached for his hand. It just surprised me. He smiled warmly. Take all the time you need. I'll love you either way. That sentence settled every remaining doubt inside her. The next morning Linda received a phone call. The caller ID read. Emily. Hi, Linda. Her cheerful voice instantly brightened the room. Hi, sweetheart. I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all. Dad told me you two were talking about buying a house. Linda smiled. He tells you everything. Emily laughed. Pretty much. I'm so excited. You know. My mom always wanted a little ranch house. Somewhere outside the city. She wanted roses climbing over a white fence. Dad couldn't afford it back then. He was just starting his business. Her voice softened. But now. You two finally have the chance to build that dream. Linda swallowed. She could almost picture it. The roses. The porch. The peaceful evenings. I haven't decided anything yet. I know. Emily answered gently. I just wanted you to know. I've never seen my father this hopeful. You're giving him something I thought he'd lost forever. Linda felt tears forming again. 3 days later she contacted a real estate agent. Her name was Melissa Grant. Young. Confident. Professional. Melissa toured the condo carefully, making notes on a tablet. When she finished, she smiled. This should move quickly. Really? It's Irvine. Inventory is low. You've maintained the property well. I'd listed around 1,100,000. Linda blinked. I didn't realize it had appreciated that much. Melissa nodded. If we price it correctly. I'd honestly expect multiple offers. Within a few weeks. Maybe sooner. That evening Linda shared the news with Michael. He wrapped his arms around her. I'm proud of you. She smiled. I haven't even signed anything yet. No. But you're trusting us. He rested his forehead against hers. That means everything to me. His voice trembled slightly. Thank you. Linda hugged him tighter. For the first time since David had walked out of her life. She felt completely safe. That night's sleep refused to come. Linda lay awake staring at the ceiling. Was she really ready to let go of the home she'd lived in for nearly 20 years? Every birthday. Every Christmas. Every memory of raising her daughter. Every painful moment after the divorce. Everything existed inside these walls. Yet perhaps. That was exactly why it was time to leave. A new chapter couldn't begin while she remained surrounded by the old one. Her phone rang just before midnight. It was her daughter. Mom. Her voice sounded tense. I was browsing Zillow tonight. Linda immediately knew why she was calling. You listed the condo? Linda sat upright in bed. I was going to tell you. When? After it sold? Emily's voice became sharper. Mom. You've known this man for barely 3 months. Linda closed her eyes. We're getting married. That's not what I'm talking about. Emily took a deep breath. You're selling the only home you own. For someone you've known 90 days. Linda felt irritation rising. He's not just someone. He's my fiancé. Mom. I'm serious. This is happening way too fast. Linda's voice hardened. You don't understand. No, Mom. I think you don't. You hardly know. I know enough. Linda interrupted. I'm 52 years old. I don't have 20 years to waste wondering if someone loves me. Silence. Then Emily spoke quietly. I'm driving down this weekend. We need to talk face to face. Linda stared into the darkness. No. What? You don't need to come. I'm an adult. I know exactly what I'm doing. Before Emily could answer, Linda ended the call. She sat alone in the dark apartment, breathing heavily. For reasons she couldn't explain. A tiny knot of fear settled deep inside her stomach. 5 minutes later her phone rang again. Michael. Hey, beautiful. His voice was warm as ever. I don't know why. But I had a feeling you needed to hear my voice. Linda burst into tears. Michael waited until Linda's breathing slowed. He never interrupted. Never rushed to offer advice. He simply listened. When she finally told him about the argument with Emily, he remained quiet for several seconds. I understand why she's worried, he said softly. She loves you. I know. But she doesn't know me. Linda wiped away another tear. No. She doesn't. Michael sighed. If she's uncomfortable. Maybe we should postpone everything. Linda immediately sat upright. What? The wedding. The house. Everything. His voice sounded genuinely disappointed. I never want you choosing between me and your daughter. I won't. You shouldn't have to. Linda shook her head. No. I'm not changing my mind. I'm just tired of everyone acting like I can't make my own decisions. Michael remained silent. Then he spoke almost reluctantly. Linda. If you have even the smallest doubt. Tell me. I'll walk away. I love you too much to let you feel trapped. The word struck her harder than anything else he had ever said. Someone willing to walk away. Must truly love her. At least, that's what she believed. She smiled through her tears. I don't have doubts. I have fears. That's different. Michael's voice softened. We'll prove everyone wrong. We'll build our home. And one day Emily will see how happy we are. Linda nodded. I believe that. So do I. The condominium sold in just 16 days. Much faster than Linda had expected. Melissa called before noon. I've got an all-cash buyer. Already? He viewed the property once. He wants it. No negotiations. Full asking price. Linda blinked. That was quick. Melissa laughed. Welcome to Southern California real estate. The buyer introduced himself as Daniel Brooks. A successful entrepreneur in his early 40s. He toured the condo for less than 10 minutes. I'll take it. That was all he said. Within a week. The paperwork was complete. Linda sat across from the escrow officer signing page after page. Every signature felt strangely final. 20 years of memories. Reduced to initials on legal documents. When everything was finished, the escrow officer smiled. Congratulations. Linda wasn't sure whether she wanted to smile back. That evening she met Michael at their favorite restaurant overlooking Newport Harbor. He stood as she approached. You did it. Linda nodded. I did. How do you feel? She stared out at the boats floating quietly in the marina. I honestly don't know. Part of me is excited. Part of me feels like I just said goodbye to an old friend. Michael gently took both of her hands. I know this wasn't easy. I'm proud of you. You trusted us. Linda smiled. We're building something together. We are. A week later the proceeds from the sale arrived in her bank account. $1,125,000. Linda stared at the screen for almost a full minute. She had never seen that much money in her life. It didn't feel real. Michael sat beside her in the bank parking lot. There's something I've been thinking about. She looked at him. What? I'd really like to start searching for houses immediately. So would I. I know several brokers. Some properties never even reach the public market. He smiled. I can probably negotiate a much better deal. That would be wonderful. Michael nodded. There is one small complication. Linda frowned. What is it? My business accounts are still frozen because of the IRS audit. I remember. I can still negotiate. I can still sign contracts. But moving large amounts of money through the business right now creates unnecessary paperwork. He looked slightly embarrassed. So. It would actually be easier if you temporarily transferred the house fund into my personal account. Linda stared at him. My account? Just until closing. We'll purchase the house. Title will be in both our names. Everything completely legal. He smiled reassuringly. I simply don't want the IRS delaying the transaction. Silence filled the car. Michael looked away. Then quietly added. But if that makes you uncomfortable, forget I mentioned it. I never want money to come between us. Linda looked at the engagement ring on her finger. The man beside her had never asked for anything. Not once. He had paid for every dinner. Every trip. Every gift. Every flower. Why would he suddenly become dishonest now? She reached for his hand. I trust you. Michael smiled. I know. I'll leave about 100,000 in my account for emergencies. The rest can go toward finding the house. Michael nodded. That's smart. You should always have a safety cushion. His answer made her trust him even more. He wasn't asking for everything. Only what they needed. Or so she believed. That evening Linda logged into her online banking. Her finger hovered above the confirmation button. She hesitated. Just for a moment. Then she pressed transfer. $1 million. The funds were sent to Michael Turner's personal account at 8:47 p.m. The confirmation email appeared seconds later. Transfer complete. Michael wrapped his arms around her. You have no idea how much this means. He kissed her forehead. I promise. Our next chapter starts now. Linda smiled. She believed every word. 2 days later she moved into a furnished rental apartment in Costa Mesa. It was only supposed to be temporary. 30 to 60 days at most. Until Michael found their dream home. He had insisted on paying the rent himself. I don't want you worrying about anything. I'll handle it. He carried her boxes upstairs himself. Made the bed. Connected the Wi-Fi. Filled the refrigerator before leaving. Standing in the unfamiliar apartment after he drove away. Linda suddenly noticed how quiet everything felt. The furniture wasn't hers. The photographs weren't on the walls. The rooms carried someone else's scent. For the first time in weeks. An uncomfortable feeling settled inside her chest. She had sold her home. Transferred nearly all of her money. And was now living in a temporary apartment. Waiting for the man she loved to return tomorrow with news about the house. She looked out the window. Rain had begun falling again. Her phone vibrated. A message from Emily appeared. Mom, please answer me. I'm worried. Linda stared at the screen. Then quietly locked her phone without replying. She convinced herself everything would make sense soon. She only had to wait one more day. She had no idea. There were only 37 days left before everything she believed would disappear forever. Michael didn't return the next day. Instead, he sent a text message just after noon. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Lawyers all day. I'll come by tomorrow. Love you. Linda read it twice. Then smiled. Business was business. She understood. Tomorrow came. Michael still didn't appear. Another message. Everything's getting complicated. Don't worry. I'll explain soon. He called that evening. His voice sounded tired. Almost strained. I'm sorry. I know I promised. It's okay. No. It isn't. I hate disappointing you. Linda could hear papers shuffling in the background. Voices. Someone speaking through what sounded like an office door. Are you at work? Unfortunately. This IRS audit has become a nightmare. He sighed. I'll make it up to you. I promise. She believed him. Again. 3 days passed before Michael finally knocked on her apartment door. Linda opened it immediately. He looked exhausted. His beard had grown in. Dark circles rested beneath his eyes. In one hand he carried a bouquet of carnations. Not fresh ones. They had already begun to wilt. I'm sorry. He kissed her forehead. I've barely slept. Linda stepped aside. Come in. The apartment suddenly felt alive again. Michael walked straight to the kitchen. He poured himself a glass of water. Drank it quickly. Then leaned against the counter. "You look terrible." He laughed quietly. "I feel worse." Linda waited. She knew something was coming. "So, what happened with the houses?" Michael rubbed his face. "I found two." Her eyes brightened. "Really?" "The first one had title issues. The owners are in the middle of probate. That deal could drag on for months." "And the second?" Michael smiled faintly. "It's beautiful." Linda leaned forward. "Tell me." "Single-story ranch. Half an acre. Orange trees. A workshop. A wraparound porch. You'd love it." Linda could already picture it. "What happened?" Michael looked down. "The owner wants more than we expected." "How much?" "About." He hesitated. 120,000. Linda frowned. "But we still have money. You kept your emergency fund." "I know." Michael nodded. "But I'd rather you keep that. What if something unexpected happens? We should always have a safety net." His answer sounded responsible. Thoughtful. Exactly what she expected from him. "So what do we do?" Michael sighed. "I'll try negotiating. If that doesn't work, I'll figure something out." Linda reached across the table. "No. We'll figure it out." Michael shook his head immediately. "I can't ask that. You already trusted me with everything. I won't take another dollar." His refusal only strengthened her confidence. She smiled. "You're not taking it. We're investing in our future." Michael looked conflicted. "I don't know." Linda squeezed his hand. "If we're going to be husband and wife, what's mine is yours." He stared at her for several long seconds. Finally, he nodded. "I'll only use what's absolutely necessary." The following morning Linda transferred another $100,000. Her remaining savings had shrunk dramatically. She told herself it didn't matter. Within weeks they'd own a house together. Everything would balance out. Another week passed. Michael's visits became less frequent. Sometimes he called. Sometimes he only texted. Always with a reason. Meeting with contractors. Closing documents. Attorney appointments. Inspection delays. Whenever Linda asked about the house, his answer remained the same. "Almost there. Just a little longer." One Thursday afternoon her phone rang. It was Emily. "Hi, Linda." Emily sounded nervous. "Everything okay?" There's something Dad probably hasn't told you." Linda's stomach tightened. "What?" Emily lowered her voice. "The IRS situation." "What about it?" "They're demanding a financial guarantee." Linda frowned. "A guarantee? If he can't provide proof of liquidity, they might freeze everything permanently." Linda sat down slowly. "How much?" Emily hesitated. "About 400,000. Silence filled the apartment. Finally Linda spoke. "I thought this was almost over." "So did we." Emily sounded close to tears. "Dad didn't want you worrying. He's been trying to protect you." Linda closed her eyes. "He never mentioned this." "Because he's embarrassed." Emily answered immediately. "You know how proud he is. He'd rather lose everything than ask you for help." Linda stared through the apartment window. Cars moved slowly below. People laughed on the sidewalk. The world outside continued as if nothing had changed. Inside, everything suddenly felt uncertain. What happens if he can't pay? Emily hesitated. They could seize company assets. The business. The equipment. Everything. And if that happens, he loses the company he spent 25 years building. Linda swallowed. Her throat felt painfully dry. There has to be another option. Emily sighed. "I'm transferring what I have. About 60,000. It's everything in my savings." Linda blinked. You're giving him your savings? Of course. He's my father. Then Emily quietly added. I just wish I could do more. After the call ended, Linda sat alone for almost an hour. She thought about Michael. About Sarah. About the future house. About the garden. About mornings on the porch. Then she remembered Emily. Her own daughter. She hadn't answered a single message in nearly 3 weeks. Her phone still showed dozens of unread texts. Slowly, she unlocked it. 34 missed calls. 21 messages. The newest one had arrived that morning. Mom. Please don't make any financial decisions until we talk. I've been researching romance scams. Some of these stories sound almost identical. Linda felt something cold spread through her chest. Romance scams? No. Not Michael. Impossible. Still. For the first time since meeting him, a single question quietly entered her mind. What if Emily was right? She immediately pushed the thought away. No. Michael wasn't pretending. He couldn't be. Not after everything they had shared. Not after the tears. The flowers. His daughter. The house. The proposal. People like that didn't fake entire lives. Did they? Linda stared at the dark screen of her phone. For the first time, she wasn't completely certain. Linda barely slept that night. She kept replaying Emily's message over and over in her mind. Romance scams. The words refused to leave her. She opened her laptop. For the first time since creating her dating profile, she typed those 2 words into a search engine. Romance scam. Hundreds of articles appeared. The first headline caught her attention. Widowers, successful businessmen, and military officers remain the most common identities used by online romance scammers. She frowned. Coincidence? Nothing more. She clicked another article. Scammers often build emotional trust before introducing temporary financial problems involving frozen accounts, tax audits, legal complications, or business delays. Linda's heartbeat quickened. IRS audit. Frozen accounts. Temporary delay. Still. Thousands of honest people dealt with tax audits every year. That didn't prove anything. She shut the laptop. I'm overthinking this, she whispered. The next morning Michael called before she even had time to make coffee. Good morning, beautiful. His voice sounded cheerful again. Almost normal. Hearing him instantly eased the panic she'd felt the night before. Morning. You sound tired. I didn't sleep much. Worried? A little. Michael sighed. I wish I could take all of this stress away. You will. Soon. I promise. Linda smiled. I know. Then Michael hesitated. There is one more issue. Her stomach tightened again. What happened? The seller. What about him? He has another buyer. Linda's heart skipped. He wants proof that we're serious. What kind of proof? A deposit. How much? Michael didn't answer immediately. Finally he spoke. 200,000. Silence. Linda slowly sat down at the kitchen table. I thought we already had everything covered. So did I. He moved the deadline. If we don't wire the deposit by Friday, he'll sell the property. Linda rubbed her forehead. When will your accounts be released? My attorney says maybe 2 weeks. Maybe. The uncertainty in his voice unsettled her. Michael quickly continued. But forget I said anything. I'll find another solution. I don't want you worrying. Linda stared out the apartment window. Cars rolled past below. People walked their dogs. Life seemed painfully ordinary. This house. Is it really that special? Michael laughed softly. You'd fall in love with it. The backyard alone would convince you. What about another property? There are others. But not like this. He paused. I just hate the thought of losing something that could have been ours. Linda closed her eyes. She could already picture it. Morning coffee. A swing on the porch. Christmas lights. Family dinners. The dream suddenly felt close enough to touch. I'll help. Michael immediately interrupted. No. I can't let you. You've already done enough. I mean it. Linda smiled. We're getting married. Our future belongs to both of us. I'll transfer the money. Michael remained silent. Finally. If you're absolutely sure. I am. His voice cracked slightly. I don't deserve you. That afternoon Linda drove to her bank. The young banker greeted her with a professional smile. Good afternoon, Ms. Parker. What can I help you with today? I need to transfer $200,000. The banker nodded. No problem. As she prepared the paperwork, she glanced at Linda. Large purchase? Linda smiled proudly. Our first home together. Congratulations. Thank you. The transfer took less than 10 minutes. When it was finished, Linda received the confirmation email. Transfer successful. Another piece of her future had just disappeared into Michael's account. For the next 8 days. Nothing happened. No closing date. No photographs. No address. Every time Linda asked about the property, Michael had another explanation. The inspection found a minor issue. The title company needs another document. The attorney wants to review something. It'll all be finished soon. His messages also became shorter. Sometimes only one sentence. Busy today. Talk tonight. Love you. The long conversations they once shared disappeared. Linda tried not to notice. She told herself he was simply overwhelmed. One evening her phone rang. Emily again. Hi. Her voice sounded unusually serious. Can we talk? Linda hesitated. Okay. Emily took a deep breath. Mom. I hired a private investigator. Linda froze. You did what? I know you're angry. I don't care. I had to. Emily. Please. Just listen. Linda remained silent. The investigator couldn't verify Michael's company. What do you mean? He found the business name. But the registered owner isn't Michael Turner. Linda felt a wave of irritation. There must be some mistake. I thought so too. So he kept digging. What did he find? Emily's breathing became shaky. The vacation house near Temecula. Linda's heart pounded. What about it? It belongs to another family. They've owned it for 12 years. Linda stood up so quickly that the chair tipped backward. No. The investigator called them. They said they occasionally rent it out as a vacation property. Linda's mouth went dry. You're lying. I wish I was. The investigator thinks Michael rented the house for a weekend. So you'd believe it was his. Linda couldn't breathe. No. No. There has to be another explanation. Before Emily could continue. Another call came through. Michael. His name filled the screen. Linda stared at it. One phone. 2 lives. One of them was telling the truth. The other was about to destroy everything. Her finger hovered above the answer button. After several seconds, she pressed accept. Hey, beautiful. Michael sounded exactly as he always had. Warm. Calm. Comforting. And for the first time since she'd met him. Linda wondered if every single word had been rehearsed. Linda pressed accept. Hi, she said quietly. Hey, beautiful. Michael's voice was exactly the same. Warm. Calm. Comforting. So. How's my favorite fiancé? Linda closed her eyes. For weeks, hearing that voice had made her feel safe. Now. It made her feel uncertain. We need to talk. There was a brief pause. Of course. What happened? Linda looked at the phone still lying on the table. Emily's call remained active on the other line. She took a slow breath. Michael. Does your company really belong to you? Silence. Only for a second. Then Michael laughed softly. Where is this coming from? My daughter hired a private investigator. Another pause. Longer this time. I figured she might. You did? She's trying to protect you. I don't blame her. His calmness surprised Linda. So, is the investigator wrong? No. Michael answered immediately. My company isn't technically in my name. Linda frowned. What? It's held under a holding corporation. My accountant insisted years ago. It's a common tax strategy. You know how complicated California business laws are. Linda wasn't an expert. The explanation sounded complicated enough to be believable. And the house? The investigator says it belongs to another family. Michael sighed. He called the owners? Apparently. Michael chuckled. Well, that explains everything. Linda's heart pounded. What do you mean? I never said I owned the house. I told you it was a vacation property. I lease it long term. The owners travel overseas most of the year. I've been renting it for nearly 18 months. Linda tried to remember. Had he actually said he owned it? Or had she simply assumed he did? She couldn't remember. Not anymore. Memory suddenly felt unreliable. Emily was still waiting on the other line. Linda switched back. He explained everything. There was silence. Then Emily spoke. What exactly did he say? Linda repeated his answers. Emily didn't interrupt. When Linda finished, Emily sighed. Mom. Those explanations can be verified. Ask him for the lease. The business registration. Anything. If everything is real, he'll have no problem showing you. Linda hesitated. That seemed reasonable. She switched back again. Michael. My daughter says. If everything is legitimate, you could just show me the paperwork. Silence. For the first time since they'd met. Michael didn't answer immediately. Finally he spoke. You don't trust me? Linda's chest tightened. That's not what I said. It feels like it. I just want to calm everyone's fears. Michael sighed deeply. I thought love meant not having to prove yourself every day. His disappointment hit Linda like a punch. No. I trust you. I just. No. He interrupted gently. I understand. If I were in your shoes, maybe I'd ask questions too. His voice sounded hurt. Not angry. Just wounded. I'll send everything. As soon as my attorney releases the documents. When will that be? Probably next week. Linda nodded slowly. Okay. But there is something else. Her stomach dropped. What? The IRS. Again. They've moved up the deadline. Linda felt exhausted just hearing those words. What now? Michael hesitated. They're requiring a temporary financial bond. If I don't post it, they'll suspend every active contract. Linda closed her eyes. How much? 300,000. She didn't answer. Michael spoke quickly. I'm not asking you. Please hear me. I'm telling you because if something happens to my business, it affects our future. Our house. Our wedding. Everything. Linda stared at the floor. 300,000. She had less than that remaining. That evening Emily arrived unexpectedly. She drove all the way from Sacramento without telling her mother. Linda opened the apartment door. Emily looked exhausted. Dark circles framed her eyes. She hadn't slept much either. Without saying a word, she hugged her mother tightly. I've been so scared. Linda hugged her back. I'm okay. No. Emily stepped inside. You're not. The apartment fell silent. Emily placed a thick folder on the dining table. I need you to look at something. Inside were printed articles. Police reports. News stories. FBI public warnings. Every page described the same pattern. Widower. Successful businessman. Financial emergency. Frozen accounts. Real estate purchase. Requests for temporary transfers. Linda's hands began to shake. No. Emily pointed to one article. This woman sold her condo. Another. This one transferred retirement savings. Another. This one met his daughter. Linda stopped reading. What? Emily nodded. The daughter was fake. An accomplice. Linda felt her pulse racing. No. Michael's daughter is real. I met her. Emily slowly opened another page. It showed a surveillance photo from a criminal case. A smiling young blonde woman. Linda's breath caught. The resemblance wasn't exact. But it was close enough to make her uneasy. The investigator thinks organized groups sometimes use female partners. They pretend to be daughters. They help build trust. Linda sat down heavily. Her mind refused to accept it. Emily knelt beside her. Mom. I'm begging you. Don't send another $1. Not until we know who he really is. Linda looked toward the engagement ring on her finger. Just weeks ago. It had represented hope. Now. For the first time. It felt heavy. Very heavy. Emily stayed the night. Neither of them slept. The folder remained open on the kitchen table. Every article seemed to tell the same story. A lonely woman. An attentive man. A whirlwind romance. A financial emergency. Then. Silence. Linda wanted to believe they were all coincidences. She had to. Because if they weren't, then every beautiful memory of the past 3 months had been manufactured. Every smile. Every embrace. Every, I love you. Nothing more than part of a script. The next morning Michael called. Linda stared at the screen. Emily watched from across the room. Put him on speaker, she whispered. Linda nodded. She answered. Good morning. Michael sounded cheerful. Morning, beautiful. I found us another house. Linda forced herself to smile. Really? This one is even better. Larger backyard. Closer to the beach. And. He laughed. I think you're going to love the kitchen. Normally those words would have filled Linda with excitement. Instead, she asked the question Emily had suggested. Can I see it? There was a pause. Of course. Today? Well. Michael hesitated. The owners are out of town. They asked me not to bring anyone until next week. Linda looked at Emily. Emily slowly shook her head. Next week? Yes. They're finishing a few renovations. Linda remained silent. Michael quickly continued. But don't worry. I've already reserved it. Reserved? I put down a refundable deposit. Linda frowned. With whose money? My own. He answered immediately. I thought your accounts were frozen. Silence. Just for a moment. Then Michael laughed. Personal account. The business accounts are frozen. My personal funds aren't. Linda didn't respond. Another explanation. Another answer that sounded reasonable. But somehow. Not quite enough. After ending the call, Emily looked at her mother. Did you notice? What? He always has an answer. Linda frowned. So? Real people stop and think. They forget details. They correct themselves. Emily tapped the folder. He never does. Linda wanted to argue. Instead, she stayed quiet. Because deep down, she had noticed the same thing. That afternoon another call came. This time, it was Emily. Michael's daughter. Hi, Linda. Her voice sounded unusually anxious. Everything okay? I hope so. Emily sighed. Dad told me you've been worried. Linda chose her words carefully. I've just been asking questions. I understand. I'd do the same. Then Emily lowered her voice. There's something Dad refuses to tell you. Linda's pulse quickened. What? He needs to post the IRS bond tomorrow. Linda closed her eyes. I know. He won't ask you. He'd rather lose everything. But. Emily paused. I can't watch him destroy the company. Linda remained silent. I'm sending every dollar I have. It still won't be enough. How much do you have? About 80,000. Linda stared at the wall. And how much does he still need? Emily answered quietly. A little over 200,000. Again. Almost exactly what Linda still had. That evening Michael arrived unexpectedly. He looked exhausted. Tie loosened. Hair messy. Dark circles under his eyes. I'm sorry. He wrapped Linda in a hug. I hate that you've been dragged into all this. She didn't hug him back immediately. He noticed. He stepped away. What's wrong? Linda looked directly into his eyes. I need to ask you something. Anything. If I called the IRS tomorrow, would they confirm everything you've told me? Michael blinked. Then smiled sadly. Probably not. Why? Because taxpayer information is confidential. Linda nodded slowly. And your attorney? You can meet him. When? Michael hesitated. He's in San Francisco until Monday. Emily quietly watched every expression from the kitchen. Every pause. Every answer. Linda took a deep breath. I need proof. Michael's face fell. What kind of proof? Anything. The company. The audit. The house. Our purchase agreement. She swallowed. I need something. For several seconds Michael simply stared at her. Then. His eyes began to fill with tears. I never thought that one day I'd have to convince the woman I love that I'm telling the truth. Linda felt her heart breaking. I'm not accusing you. I know. He smiled weakly. I'm just disappointed. He slowly removed the engagement ring from her finger. Linda gasped. What are you doing? If you don't trust me, you shouldn't wear this. He gently placed the ring on the kitchen table. I won't pressure you. I won't argue. When you're ready to believe in us again, call me. He kissed her softly on the forehead. Then walked toward the door. Linda stood frozen. Michael. He stopped. Without turning around, he quietly said. I've already lost one wife. I don't think I can survive losing another. The door closed behind him. Silence filled the apartment. Linda stared at the ring lying on the table. For a long moment. Neither she nor Emily spoke. Finally Emily whispered. Mom. Don't chase him. Linda looked at the closed door. Every instinct told her to run after him. To apologize. To tell him she believed him. Instead, she remained exactly where she was. For the first time, Michael had walked away. And something inside Linda quietly realized. That might have been exactly what he wanted. Linda didn't call Michael. Not that day. Not the next one either. The engagement ring remained exactly where he had left it, resting on the kitchen table like a silent question neither she nor Emily could answer. Every few hours Linda caught herself staring at it. Then she would remember his expression. The hurt in his eyes. The disappointment in his voice. Had she made a terrible mistake? Or had she finally started asking the questions she should have asked months ago? She no longer knew. On Monday morning, Linda's phone buzzed. A text from Michael. I hope you're okay. I'm giving you the space you asked for. I love you. No matter what happens. Nothing else. No mention of money. No pressure. No guilt. Just those 4 sentences. Emily read the message over Linda's shoulder. He knows exactly what he's doing. Linda looked at her. What do you mean? He wants you to feel guilty. He wants you to think you're the one who broke his heart. Linda frowned. I did hurt him. Emily shook her head. No. You asked for proof. That's not cruelty. That's common sense. The following afternoon the private investigator called. His name was Mark Ellis, a former detective with nearly 30 years of experience. I've got an update. Linda immediately put him on speaker. What did you find? I've spent the last 3 days checking every detail Michael gave you. Linda held her breath. And? The construction consulting company exists. Her shoulders relaxed. But it belongs to a completely different man. What? Same business name. Different owner. No Michael Turner. No partner by that name. Linda looked at Emily. Neither spoke. What about his attorney? I couldn't locate anyone by that name working on IRS audit cases. And the audit? Mark sighed. I can't legally access IRS records. But I spoke with 2 tax attorneys. Neither one could think of a situation where a business owner would need money transferred into a personal account because of a routine audit. Linda felt her stomach tighten. What about the vacation house? I confirmed what your daughter already told you. It belongs to a retired couple from Arizona. They rent it on short-term vacation platforms. They've never heard of Michael Turner. Linda slowly sat down. So, what does all that mean? There was a long silence. Finally Mark answered. It means someone is lying. That evening Michael called again. Linda answered immediately. Before he could speak, she asked. Can we meet? Of course. Tonight. There was a brief pause. Absolutely. They agreed to meet at the same waterfront cafe in Laguna Beach where they'd had their first date. Michael was already waiting when Linda arrived. He stood as she approached. Just like the first time. Only now. Everything felt different. He smiled. You look beautiful. Linda didn't smile back. We need to talk. Michael nodded. I know. They sat. Neither reached for the menu. Neither ordered coffee. Linda looked him directly in the eyes. I hired an investigator. Michael didn't react. I figured. He couldn't verify anything you've told me. Still. Michael remained calm. I'm sorry you felt you had to do that. Linda leaned forward. Who owns your company? I've explained that. Who owns the vacation house? I've explained that too. I want documents. They're with my attorney. I want to meet your attorney. You will. When? Michael hesitated. Soon. Linda's voice became firmer. No. Not soon. This week. Again. Silence. For the first time since meeting him, Michael looked uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. Finally he sighed. Linda. There are things I haven't told you. Her heartbeat accelerated. What things? My business is in much worse shape than I admitted. She stared at him. I didn't tell you because I was ashamed. He rubbed his forehead. I've been trying to save it. 4 months. The audit. The lawsuits. The cash flow. It's all become too much. Linda listened carefully. Every answer sounded emotional. But strangely, none of them answered her actual questions. So who owns the company? Michael looked away. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. He sighed again. You wouldn't understand. Linda slowly reached into her purse. She removed a folded sheet of paper. Mark Ellis had printed it for her. It contained the official ownership records of the company Michael claimed to own. She slid it across the table. I understand this. Michael looked down. His face changed. Just for a fraction of a second. But Linda saw it. The confidence disappeared. Only for a moment. Then. It returned. He pushed the paper back toward her. Those records are outdated. Mark had warned her he might say something like that. They were updated yesterday. Linda answered quietly. Michael didn't speak. She took another document from her purse. The property records for the Temecula house. This? He glanced at it. Another pause. Another excuse never came. Linda suddenly realized something. For the first time since they'd met, Michael wasn't leading the conversation anymore. She was. And he didn't seem prepared for that. She looked directly into his eyes. One final question. Who are you, Michael? He opened his mouth. Then closed it again. For nearly 10 seconds. Neither of them spoke. Finally, Michael whispered. You really don't want the answer to that? Michael stared at Linda. The noise of the cafe seemed to disappear. Waves rolled quietly onto the beach outside. Coffee cups clinked against saucers. People laughed at nearby tables. Yet inside the silence between them, everything had changed. Finally, Michael leaned back in his chair. His shoulders dropped. For the first time since they'd met, he looked tired. Not physically. Emotionally. You deserve the truth. Linda held her breath. I don't even know where to begin. Start with your real name. He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the warmth she'd fallen in love with was gone. My name isn't Michael Turner. Linda felt her stomach twist. What is it? It doesn't matter anymore. It matters to me. He looked out toward the ocean. I've used several names over the years. Linda's hands began to tremble. So, none of it was real? He didn't answer immediately. My wife? He shook his head. I've never been married. Emily? Another pause. Not my daughter. Linda felt the air leave her lungs. The woman I introduced you to works with me. Linda stared at him in disbelief. No. She plays different roles. Sometimes a daughter. Sometimes a niece. Sometimes a business partner. Linda whispered. Why? Michael looked down at the table. Because people trust families. Linda couldn't speak. Every memory she'd cherished collapsed in seconds. The lunches. The holidays. The stories about Sarah. The tears. The photographs on the fireplace. Every detail. Carefully constructed. You rented that house. Yes. The photographs? They belonged to another family. You put them in frames? He nodded. We do it every time. Linda felt sick. She remembered standing in that living room, holding Sarah's photograph, feeling sympathy for a woman who had never existed. Why me? Her voice barely rose above a whisper. Michael looked at her for a long moment, then answered honestly. Because you were lonely. The words landed harder than any scream. You weren't chosen because you were foolish. You were chosen because you wanted someone to love you. Linda couldn't stop the tears. You studied me. Yes. My profile. My Facebook. Your old school website. Public records. Everything. We knew about your divorce. We knew your daughter lived in Sacramento. We knew you had recently retired. We knew you owned your condo free and clear. Linda covered her mouth. You knew how much it was worth. Michael nodded once. Approximately. She looked at him as though seeing a stranger for the first time. Were any of your feelings real? That question lingered between them. Much longer than she expected. Finally, Michael answered. I wasn't supposed to care. Linda frowned. What does that mean? The first month. I was just doing my job. He swallowed. But then. You made it difficult. Difficult? You were kind. You remembered little things. You brought soup when I pretended to be sick. You bought a birthday present for someone who didn't even exist. He laughed bitterly. I've done this for years. I've never hated myself more than I did with you. Linda felt anger rising. So you kept lying. Yes. You kept taking my money. Yes. You proposed. Yes. Why? His eyes filled with tears. Because by then, I was trapped too. Linda stared at him. How many women? Michael didn't answer. How many? He looked away. I honestly don't know. 12? 20? More. Linda closed her eyes. So I was just another victim. No. He answered immediately. You were different. She laughed through tears. Don't. I'm serious. I shouldn't have kept going. I wanted to disappear after the first transfer. But once money starts moving, there's no leaving. Linda frowned. What are you talking about? Michael looked around the cafe. Then lowered his voice. You think this was just me? It wasn't. There are people above me. They choose the targets. They rent the houses. They create the fake identities. They move the money. I never even touched most of it. Linda stared at him. Where is my money? Gone. What? It was transferred within hours. Different accounts. Different countries. By now, it's almost impossible to recover. Tears streamed down Linda's face. You stole everything. Michael slowly nodded. I'm sorry. No. She shook her head. You're sorry you got caught. He didn't argue. Because he couldn't. At that moment, two people walked into the cafe. Neither ordered coffee. Neither looked at the menu. Instead, they walked directly toward the table. One of them was Mark Ellis, the private investigator. The other wore a navy jacket with large yellow letters across the back. FBI. Michael saw them. His face turned pale. Mark stopped beside Linda. You okay? She nodded silently. The FBI agent looked directly at Michael. We need to speak with you. Michael didn't move. For several seconds. He simply stared out at the Pacific Ocean. Then, without resistance, he slowly stood. As the agent placed him in handcuffs, Michael turned toward Linda one last time. I really did love the version of myself you believed in. Linda said nothing. Because there was nothing left to say. The cafe fell completely silent. Conversation stopped. Forks rested motionless above half-finished meals. Every eye followed Michael as the FBI agent carefully guided him toward the exit. He didn't resist. He didn't argue. He didn't even ask for a lawyer. He simply walked. Halfway to the door, he turned one last time. His eyes found Linda. For just a second, they looked exactly as they had on the day they first met. Gentle. Regretful. Human. Then the doors closed behind him. And he was gone. Linda sat frozen. She hadn't cried. Not yet. She simply stared at the empty chair across from her. The chair where Michael, or whatever his real name was, had been sitting only moments earlier. Mark quietly pulled out the chair beside her. I'm sorry. Linda nodded without looking at him. So, it was all true. Mark took a slow breath. I'm afraid so. She swallowed hard. How long? We've been tracking this group for almost 4 years. Linda finally looked at him. A group? Mark nodded. This wasn't one man. It never is. He placed a thick manila folder on the table. Inside were photographs. Driver's licenses. Passports. Different names. Different hairstyles. Different cities. The same face. Michael's face. Only now he had become someone else. Again. And again. And again. Linda slowly turned each page. Michael Turner. Daniel Hayes. Richard Collins. Stephen Brooks. Thomas Reed. 5 identities. 5 different lives. None of them real. How many women? Mark sighed. We've confirmed 19. Linda stopped turning the pages. 19? Confirmed. We believe there are more. The FBI agent returned a few minutes later. He introduced himself. I'm Special Agent David Morales. Linda shook his hand mechanically. I know this is overwhelming. It is. We'd like to ask you a few questions. She nodded. Anything. The interview lasted nearly 3 hours. Every message. Every phone call. Every date. Every gift. Every transfer. The agents documented everything. Nothing seemed too small. What flowers did he usually bring? White lilies. Did he ever let you photograph his driver's license? No. Did he ever avoid having his picture taken? Linda stopped. Actually. Yes. She remembered dozens of moments. Whenever tourists offered to take their picture, Michael politely declined. Whenever she suggested posting photos online, he always smiled. I'd rather keep us private. At the time, she thought it was romantic. Now, she understood. Another agent placed several photographs on the table. Have you seen this woman? Linda immediately recognized her. Emily. The agent shook his head. Not Emily. He slid another photograph beside it. The same woman. Different hair color. Different glasses. Different name. This is Nicole Harper. Another photograph. This time she called herself Amanda. Another. Here she was Rachel. Linda stared in disbelief. She worked with him? The agent nodded. For years. As the interview ended, Agent Morales spoke gently. I need to prepare you for something. Linda looked up. The chances of recovering your money. He paused. Are unfortunately very small. How small? Most of it left the country within 24 hours. Different cryptocurrency exchanges. Shell companies. Foreign accounts. Linda quietly lowered her eyes. Over $1,300,000. Gone. Her retirement. Her security. The home she'd spent 20 years paying for. Everything. Gone. 3 weeks later, news of the arrests became public. Local television stations covered the story. National news outlets picked it up. The headline was everywhere. Multi-state romance fraud ring dismantled after years-long investigation. Linda watched the report from her temporary apartment. The screen showed Michael being escorted into federal court. Only now the reporter used another name. Authorities still weren't certain which one was real. Investigators believed even his birth records had been falsified decades earlier. He had spent most of his adult life becoming whoever his victims needed him to be. More victims began coming forward. One woman from Arizona had lost nearly $600,000. A retired nurse in Nevada lost her pension. A widow in Oregon had sold her home just as Linda had. Each story sounded painfully familiar. Different names. Different cities. Exactly the same script. Linda realized something terrifying. If Michael had never met her, he simply would have found someone else. Several months later, Linda received an unexpected phone call. It was Agent Morales. We recovered something. Her heart skipped. My money? I'm sorry. No. What then? A letter. Linda frowned. A letter? He asked us to give it to you. After a long silence, she quietly replied. I'll read it. She had no idea that the final words from the man she thought she loved would force her to confront one last painful question. Not whether he had lied, but whether any part of him had ever truly existed. The envelope arrived on a gray Tuesday morning. There was no return address. Only a small sticker from the Federal Bureau of Investigation indicating that the contents had been reviewed before being released. Linda stared at it for nearly 10 minutes before opening it. Her hands trembled. Emily sat quietly across from her at the kitchen table. You don't have to read it. Linda nodded. I know. But I have to. She carefully unfolded a single sheet of lined paper. The handwriting was unmistakable. Neat. Steady. Just like every birthday card Michael had ever written. Or whatever his real name had been. She began reading. Linda. By the time you receive this letter, I'll already know how my story ends. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm writing because you're the only person who ever made me wish I had lived a different life. Linda stopped reading. Her eyes filled with tears. Emily gently placed a hand over hers. You don't have to keep going. Linda took a deep breath. I need to. Everything I told you about my childhood was a lie. My wife never existed. Neither did my daughter. But one thing was true. I did forget what peace felt like until I met you. That wasn't part of the job. It became the problem. Linda swallowed hard. She continued. People imagine men like me as monsters. Some are. Some enjoy watching people lose everything. I never did. That doesn't make me innocent. It only makes me a coward. Every time I wanted to walk away, someone reminded me what happens to people who leave. Linda frowned. What does that mean? Emily quietly shook her head. It could be another lie. Linda nodded. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. She kept reading. You once asked me if any of my feelings were real. The answer is yes. Not at the beginning. At the beginning, you were simply another profile. Another lonely woman. Another assignment. But somewhere between the flowers, the coffee, and the afternoons watching the rain, I started forgetting who I was pretending to be. I hated myself for that. Linda closed her eyes. She remembered every one of those afternoons. Now they felt like scenes from someone else's life. The day you brought homemade chicken soup because you thought I had the flu. I almost confessed everything. When you introduced me to your favorite bookstore, I almost disappeared forever. When you said yes after I proposed, I realized there was no future left for either of us. Not together. Not separately. I had already destroyed too much. Linda wiped away another tear. She wasn't crying for him. She realized she was crying for herself. For the woman who had believed every word. The final paragraph was shorter than all the others. One day, you'll probably wonder if the man you loved ever existed. The answer is complicated. Michael Turner never existed. But the man who laughed with you on the beach. Who loved the way you wrinkled your nose when you laughed. Who memorized exactly how you liked your coffee. That man was real. He simply wasn't brave enough to become him. Goodbye, Linda. There was no signature. Only a single initial. M. Neither woman spoke for several minutes. Finally Emily broke the silence. What do you think? Linda carefully folded the letter. I think. She searched for the right words. I'll never know which parts were true. Emily nodded. Maybe that's okay. Linda looked toward the window. Outside, the first warm days of spring had arrived. People walked along the sidewalks. Children rode bicycles. Life continued. It always did. No matter how broken someone felt. The criminal case lasted almost 18 months. Federal prosecutors uncovered evidence connecting the fraud ring to victims in 11 states. More than 40 people were eventually charged. Some accepted plea deals. Others went to trial. The man Linda had known as Michael refused to reveal his real identity until the very end. Even after sentencing, investigators were uncertain whether the name listed in court records was genuine. In the end, it didn't matter. Whatever his real name had been, it belonged to a stranger. Linda never recovered most of her money. Insurance couldn't cover fraud she had authorized herself. The condo was gone. Her retirement savings were gone. She accepted a part-time position tutoring elementary school students. Not because she wanted to. Because she needed to. Starting over at 53 wasn't easy. But it wasn't impossible. And slowly, very slowly, she began building a new life. A year passed. Then another. Time didn't erase what had happened. It simply changed the shape of the pain. Linda eventually moved into a modest townhouse just outside Costa Mesa. It wasn't the dream home she and Michael had once imagined. There was no wraparound porch. No orange grove. No sweeping vineyard views. Just a small patio with 2 chairs and a single lemon tree she planted herself. Oddly enough, it was enough. She continued tutoring children 3 afternoons a week. The work didn't make her wealthy. But every time a struggling student finally understood a difficult lesson, She felt something money could never replace. Purpose. Her students didn't know anything about the $1 million. Or the man who had stolen her future. To them, she was simply Mrs. Parker. The teacher who never gave up on anyone. Emily visited often. Their relationship became stronger than it had been in years. One Sunday afternoon they sat together on the patio drinking iced tea. "I still think about him sometimes." Linda admitted it quietly. Emily nodded. "I know. I don't miss him." Linda looked at the lemon tree. "I miss the life I thought I was going to have." Emily reached across the table. "I think that's what people misunderstand. They assume victims fall in love with a person. But really, they fall in love with a future." Linda smiled sadly. "That's exactly it. I wasn't mourning Michael. I was mourning the woman I believed I was becoming." Several months later, Linda received an invitation to speak at a community seminar about online fraud. At first, she refused. "I don't want people looking at me with pity." The organizer smiled kindly. "They won't. They'll see someone who survived." After several days of thinking, she accepted. The auditorium was filled with retirees. Widows. Widowers. People who had recently begun exploring online dating after years of being alone. Linda stood behind the podium holding a small stack of notes. Then, she placed them aside. She didn't need them. "I used to believe scams only happened to careless people." A quiet laugh moved through the room. "So did I. I was a teacher for nearly 30 years. I taught children how to think critically. I taught them not to trust strangers." She paused. "And then, I ignored every lesson I'd ever taught." The audience remained silent. Not because they were judging her. Because they were listening. "I wasn't tricked because I was unintelligent. I was tricked because I was lonely." Those words seemed to echo throughout the room. Loneliness changes the way you evaluate people. It makes kindness feel like proof. It makes attention feel like love. It makes hope louder than caution. Linda looked across the audience. Several people quietly wiped tears from their eyes. If someone truly loves you, they won't ask you to ignore your instincts. They won't make you choose between trust and verification. They'll understand why both matter. After the presentation, dozens of people approached her. One elderly man confessed he had nearly wired money to someone claiming to be a woman overseas. A widow admitted she had been chatting with someone who always seemed to have another financial emergency. Another woman quietly whispered, "I was about to sell my house." Linda hugged her. For the first time since everything had happened, she realized her story could save someone else. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was how healing began. Nearly 3 years after Michael's arrest, Agent David Morales called one last time. "I thought you'd like to know." Linda smiled. "What is it?" "The final appeals are over." She understood immediately. "So, it's finished." "It is." "What sentence did he receive?" 28 years. Linda remained quiet. "Did he ever tell you his real name?" Agent Morales sighed. "No. We're still not certain he ever used it." After ending the call, Linda stepped outside. The afternoon sun warmed the patio. The lemon tree she'd planted now carried its first ripe fruit. She picked one gently from the branch and smiled. Life had continued growing. Even while she believed everything had ended. Sometimes, late in the evening, Linda would open the small wooden box she kept in her bedroom. Inside were only 3 things. The engagement ring. Michael's final letter. And a photograph of herself taken years before she met him. She no longer kept the picture because it reminded her of happier times. She kept it because it reminded her of something far more important. The woman in that photograph wasn't weak. She wasn't foolish. She wasn't naive. She was simply human. And humans are capable of believing beautiful lies when they desperately need them to be true. Linda gently closed the box and returned it to the shelf. Then she walked into the kitchen, made herself a cup of coffee, opened the back door, and sat beneath the California sunset. The future she had imagined had disappeared. But another one had quietly taken its place. Not built on promises. Not built on fantasies. built on something much stronger. The truth. And sometimes, the truth is where real healing finally begins.